Hey folks, Casey here. Hello and welcome back to the channel. This week we're talking about the Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro CNC plasma table. And I'm going to do something a little bit different this week. I've had the Langmuir Systems CNC plasma table for about 2.5 years now. Overall, it's been a great table. I have had a few more issues than the average user to get this thing up and running and make it all work. I've got about half a dozen videos out on the subject. The problem is the YouTube algorithm sends a lot of new people to this channel and it will only show you one of my videos. So maybe you'll see a really critical video or maybe you'll see a really congratulatory video, but you won't get the whole story. So I've decided to sit down and edit together all of my Langmuir Systems content into one easily digestible video that really paints the whole picture, from unboxing and setup to first cuts, trials and tribulations, and everything in between. So if you're looking for the ultimate guide on what to expect if you're getting into one of these CNC plasma tables, this is it. So without further ado, let's get into it. This week we're talking Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro CNC plasma table. Get behind the camera, show you guys what you get when you purchase a CNC plasma table from Langmuir Systems. We're going to talk about the 77-page full color PDF instructions that they send you with the plasma table. Well, they don't send you these, you send you the file and you print them out. I'm going to unbox everything off camera and do an inventory and then show you what you get because I've heard it is rather daunting and there are quite a few pieces. And then I think what I'll do is I'll kind of high spot the assembly process, common issues that I've read about that other people have had during assembly. This is, of course, assuming everything unboxes well and I have everything I need to progress. And, hopefully all goes smoothly. And we'll end this video with some actual cuts being made. Anyway, I'm going to get behind the camera and show you what you get when you order the Crossfire Pro from Langmuir Systems. Okay, so today is Thursday, December 22nd. I ordered the Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro CNC plasma table on Black Friday, November 25th. I received the last of my packages, the long-awaited limit switch kit from them about 2 days ago. So just less than a month to deliver the whole package. They had a 2-week lead time listed. I think I had the first of my boxes within about a week. So pretty timely shipping overall. The limit switch is brand new. They just came out with it. It's a much needed addition based on the user feedback that I've read. So not surprising that that was the last straggler. Also, the prime weld plasma cutter is not from Langmuir Systems. That's something I added based on user feedback and YouTube videos that I've watched. They will sell you the machine with either a razor weld or a hypertherm unit. Razor weld being their low-end option, hypertherm being a very, very nice plasma cutter at quite a premium, almost as much as the table, in fact. I went with the prime weld because they have an excellent warranty, excellent customer service, and it was a fairly affordable unit. I was about $850 into it with a machine torch and hand torch. So if you order a plasma table from Langmuir Systems, you get it in 3 boxes. You've got your main box, which is about 130 pounds, includes the table frame, gantry, etc., slats for the water table. Second box, which is the water table itself and gussets. And a third box, which is the computer and electronics. I opted to get a torch height controller and a limit switch, which were both part of their Black Friday package. $495 worth of options off the base table price. And on Black Friday, they were free. So you couldn't really go wrong there. Put the total purchase price of the table, I think around $3,000 with tax. I'm pretty excited for the capability that $3,000 is going to add to my shop. This 6th package, machine torch holder, which is not 100% necessary, but I think it should be a nice addition to the package. So we'll probably move this prime weld out of the way, save it for the end when it comes to hooking up the plasma cutter. And I'm going to get all these unboxed and inventoried. All right, so it's exactly 50 minutes later. That's how long it took me to get everything opened up.
As you can see, the amount of parts you get with this thing, it's staggering. I mean, just the amount of bolts, nuts, and washers. But everything is packaged extremely well. Well labeled. This is the bulk of the table itself. Table legs, horizontal and vertical supports, table leg gussets, table skirts. These are our gantry arms, water table and slats. Hardware, stepper motors, electronics, bearing blocks. I believe these are the gantry supports, torch height controller, limit switch kit. There's the machine torch holder, bearing block supports for the lead screws, some big heavy plates. I'm not sure what they're for mounting, but we'll figure it out. Plugs for all the tubing ends, table legs. So I'm gonna start setting stuff up. I think we're probably gonna end up getting the basic table set up, and then we'll start showing you guys some steps. Okay, so I sort of lied. I just had to come back and show this to you guys. This is the contents of the hardware bag. And as you can see, every single bag is labeled with a number, and the instructions pertain directly to that. And that is your hardware assortment. It's pretty impressive stuff.
Well, mixed impressions so far, to be honest. So step one in the instructions is to take your table legs and pound the little blocks that hold the leveling feet into them, set up the leveling feet. Did that. Step two is to assemble the table structure. And in step two, they go into deciphering the left from the right table rail support tubes. And it turns out that I have two lefts and I do not have a right. Number one, the Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro does not come with any sort of telephone customer service. They will give you excellent customer service via email. For whatever reason, they've decided that at this money level, telephone service is not included. And that includes when they make a mistake. And it has nothing to do with your lack of being able to understand the instructions or processes or so on and so forth. That said, they give excellent customer service over email, but it is a little bit clunky because you're waiting on servers and lag, and they're reading other people's emails before they email you back. So when you have something that needs immediate attention, it can be a little bit frustrating that they won't just pick up the phone and call you. Evidently, in their calculus, the price of the table is such that they cannot afford to provide phone service when you buy this table. They provide it on their higher end tables. I don't know that it's explicitly laid out for the prospective buyers. I certainly did a fair bit of research and I never found out about it. I guess it is a known quantity, so make sure that you know that going in. Number two, this isn't so much something I wish I had known, though I guess it kind of is. I wish that when my table showed up 2 weeks ago, I had opened the boxes and done a very careful inventory of the parts. And I would have noticed in box number one that I was missing things. Now, Langmuir Systems, if you're listening, I think you should provide a detailed checklist. You do provide in the instruction manual a very vague checklist, which I did go through immediately when I laid all the parts out and didn't realize that I had 2 incorrect table legs and 1 incorrect lower support rail until I got to step number 2 of the instructions, which was about how to identify the difference between those parts. So my advice to any prospective Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro CNC plasma table purchasers is to open every box as soon as you get it, lay everything out meticulously, and then read through the instruction manual from start to finish, because there are little sections that provide subtle detail about differences between parts that otherwise look the same. And the reason that this is important is because it seems like Langmuir might have a little bit of a packaging QC issue, and they are very quick to resolve it. But if you do like I did, and you set aside a week to build your table, and then you open and lay everything out that day that you're going to start, you find out too late that you don't have everything you need to put the table together. In my case, I got 2 left-hand lower support rails, and I got 4 identical table legs. There are 2 styles. So full disclosure, Langmuir did get back to me within 24 hours. They did make a plan to get the replacement parts necessary out to me. Because of the holidays, well, it's going to be over a week. It will probably be almost a week and a half before I actually have the parts in my hands. And after waiting between 2 and 4 weeks for all of the sub-assemblies to initially get here, kind of a bummer, especially because I had a week off to work on this, and I've got jobs coming in next week, and I've got table components all over my garage. So save yourself a lot of heartache and check your components as soon as they get here. Familiarize yourself with the instructions, and Langmuir, if you're listening, provide a detailed checklist of every part in the bag. Number 3, when the folks at Langmuir tell you that something is shipping or has shipped and provide you a tracking number, it is not necessarily going to go out anytime soon. I received my first tracking number for my table days after I ordered it. It was about a week after I initially placed the order. They had said they had a 2-week lead time at the time my order was placed. That was for one of the boxes. It didn't actually ship for almost a week from when they issued me the tracking number in the email that said your item has shipped. It didn't actually ship for almost a week. I understand that. That's, maybe they only have a certain number of UPS pickups. Maybe they print tracking numbers and shipping labels before they're ready to actually have the product go out. I don't really care. It's just, a minor annoyance that isn't really necessary. In the case of my parts for my table, I had somebody from customer support who, again, was really quick to get a hold of me and tell me that they were sending parts out. But they swore up and down that those parts would ship out that same day. And here we are 4 days later, and yes, it was Christmas, but the parts still haven't shipped. The shipping label was created, but the parts have not shipped. I just, semantics, maybe, I don't know, but an unnecessary source of frustration. I decided to call this video 3 things that you should know before purchasing your Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro CNC plasma table. The facts are, most of the information floating around on the web about this brand, in my perception, and this is just my perception, seems to be from people who forthright come forward and say that this is a paid promotion. They have affiliate links on their channels. They either say that they received some kind of discount. I think some of them might have even received the tables for free. There's a lot of paid promotion. On the other hand, there is very little negative information at all. When I posted on the Langmuir Systems forums about my 2 left-hand lower table supports and my 4 identical table legs and a missing bag of hardware, which was my misunderstanding, was never actually included, that forum was seen by one other member, and then somebody from Langmuir Systems saw it. And as soon as they saw it and responded to me, they deleted my forum post. I wasn't disrespectful in any way. I just laid out a plain accounting of how I saw it. I mentioned that I was feeling conflicted about what I had gotten myself into with the purchase, because, most of the information that you see about a Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro is positive, and a lot of it is paid promotion. And I was beginning to wonder if I had been hoodwinked. As soon as they contacted me and said they were sending out parts, I no longer felt that way. But, what a great opportunity to show how excellent your customer service is and how fast you resolved a problem. But instead, they deleted my forum post, which made me feel like they're trying to hide how often these errors actually come up. I messaged on the forums the gentleman who had replied to my post, and I thanked him for replying to my post. And I said that, you know, Langmuir's on top of this already, going to have parts by the end of next week. By the way, did you notice they deleted my forum post? And he said, yeah, you know, I've noticed that I've responded to a few people who have posted similar problems receiving the wrong parts, whose posts were also deleted as soon as Langmuir saw them. So not only is there a good chance that what you're seeing on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or whatever is paid promotion, but there's a chance that negative feedback was removed from the sources that they own. All right, folks, so it's exactly 9 days later, and well, I finally got my missing pieces for my table structure. You can see there my incorrect legs and table support. So I've got the table structure all assembled. They have you get in here and they have you square it up with a carpenter square in the corners, and then you kind of gradually snug everything up. Then you measure across the front and the rear, and those dimensions need to be within a 32nd of an inch. And I'm right there. So, as you can see, I received 2 of these left side table rails. And if you look at the hole arrangement there, and the hole arrangement there, you can see that they are exactly mirrored. And it's a combination of large and small holes because you've got to be able to get bolts and spacers in and nuts through the other side. And if you have the wrong ones, it's not going to go together. Also, if you'll notice on the table legs themselves, 2 of the legs have some holes for electronics mounting, and 2 of the legs do not. And it's not just those little holes for the electronics, because sure, you could drill those, but it's the arrangement of the other holes, because basically you've got 2 right side legs and 2 left side legs, and what I wound up with was 4 of the same legs. So
Check your parts. Let me show you a couple of snags that I've hit on this table so far, and a couple of things that I'm doing that aren't quite in the Langmuir instructions. Okay, so first off, I own a TIG welder, but I did decide to go ahead and try the silicone on the water table. These things are notorious for leaking, but I'm kind of convinced that that's because people can't properly set a silicone joint. So I'll eat my words if I put this thing together and it leaks. I had a hell of a time with my bearing adjustment, but now I feel pretty good about it. Basically, one of my gantry y-axis weldments was a little bit off, and I emailed Langmuir. I didn't hear back from them this time, so I went ahead and I decided to just kind of try to send it home. I'll show a picture of what I mean. But I think that's kind of put my carriages ever so slightly tweaked, and basically to get a good alignment where I had at least 1 bearing on each bearing block in contact with the rail at a time, I had to loosen and adjust the blocks that are fixed. But I've got it now to where it moves, and it's, you know, got some resistance, but not a lot of resistance. Anyway, so another big thing that people comment on these tables is the table drain plugs sit on the surface. And well, thanks to a fellow by the name of Dan Brubaker, I decided to come up with a little dimple die. Not like a standard dimple die. This actually gives you a step rather than just a dimple. So there is my new drain plug. And as you can see, I've got a nice little step there. The drain plug now sits below the surface, so the table will fully drain. So yeah, that's about all I know. Got my table secured, my water table secured to the plasma table. It's sealed up. It's been sitting for more than 24 hours. I just got to throw a dimple in that and set my drains, set my slats, trim my Z-axis, and then it's going to be time to start installing lead screws. So I'll bring you back when I have something fun to show. All right, so it's assembly day 6, and I haven't been putting in full days, more like half days, but this thing is a beast. Let me show you what I have going on. So the Langmuir Systems plasma table is fully assembled. I've got my plasma cutter mounted underneath. I've got my machine torch mounted to the actual machine. I'll show you something kind of fun that I came up with from the Langmuir support group on Facebook. This is just a little silicone funnel for filling, for like, you know, kitchen stuff, filling a bottle. It folds down and will give you some splash protection. I thought that was pretty cool. It cost me $5. I'll put a link in the description. My biggest beef about this table is the cable management, which is, you know, I've done my best to tidy it up. I've put a ton of zip ties on this thing. But really, there is no cable management. It's just kind of, you know, a bunch of cables running loose. In fact, what really bugs me the most is the X-axis cable is just loose, and it's got slack built into it, and it just runs back and forth up and down the table. Not a lot that can be done. And again, for the price paid for this machine, you're not going to get top-notch cable management. I mean, this thing's dirt cheap, let's be real. Anyway, and on that end, this is not part of the Langmuir setup, but the Primeweld plasma cutter, they give you this little CNC connector. And it is nice to have a CNC connector and not have to open up your plasma cutter and go into the wiring. So Primeweld is a good choice in that regard. But man, I am not a solderer. And I had to solder a 22 gauge wire to the pins of this connector so that my little barrel connectors from Langmuir could plug into my plasma cutter. And I screwed up and left the end off, and boy, that just wasn't fun. Anyway, where I'm at right now is hooking up Langmuir's torch height controller. This little add-on, $400 add-on, but I tell you what, it basically uses the plasma voltage to tell the torch how high to sit off the material. And it's typically found only in higher end CNC plasma setups. So it's a pretty cool, pretty trick setup. That's where I'm at right now, is getting that set up. So I'll bring you back when I have more to show.
All right, so right off the bat, I didn't have my pierce delay set long enough. I had it a half second, which was the default in Fusion 360. I think I need it more like probably a second and a half. But with the exception of that, it cut through cleanly everywhere. Not bad for my very first try and pretty much just guessing at the settings. I'm pretty impressed, I have to say.
When I first got this machine up and running, I was having an issue that baffled a lot of people. In fire control software, the digital readout for voltage was freezing. And oftentimes the torch height control on this table would freeze along with it. So the table torch height control reads cut voltage, and the closer you are to the work, the higher the voltage goes. So if it senses voltage climbing past a preset amount, it will raise the torch up to try to bring voltage back down and keep the cut height consistent, because cut height on CNC plasma is crucial to having a nice cut. Conversely, if it sees voltage dropping, it will lower the torch into the work to bring the voltage back up. It does all that to try to maintain a 60 thousandths cut height, which is the optimum height for CNC plasma. So what was happening with this was electromagnetic interference was getting into the brain, the ECU on the side of the machine, and it was basically freezing that voltage reading in the software on the laptop. If that freeze happened when the torch height control was making a corrective move, i.e. bringing the torch up or down, it would continue in that direction in perpetuity until I reset the machine. This resulted in one pretty substantial crash where it basically drove the torch into my work. It wrecked a $200 piece of aluminum, and it bent the Z-axis bearing rods and lead screw on my machine, which Langmuir fairly promptly replaced. I'd say within about 3 business days, they had a new Z-axis on its way to me. But that didn't solve the root problem of the software freezing. For 44 days and over 100 hours of my own labor time, diagnostic-wise, I worked with the good folks on the Langmuir Systems Forum and one of Langmuir's own tech department people who basically talked to me on the phone, would Skype into my computer, screen share and all that stuff to watch what my machine was doing as it was having these issues. The issues were super easy to reproduce. They were progressively getting worse and worse, so it just became easier and easier to like see the issues happening in real time. But for 44 days and 100 hours of diagnostic time, I worked on this. The forum was invaluable during that time. They gave me all sorts of things to try. They sent me down a few rabbit holes too, but they helped me streamline my setup and basically implement a lot of best practices. And as a complete plasma cutting noob, their information was invaluable. In fact, I have a list here of everything that we tried in order to eventually fix this software issue. First, right off the bat, played with all of my cut settings in the programming software to try to optimize those. After that didn't help, I increased my air compressor's drying capability. I have a really nice 3-stage motor guard filter, and that's after 50 feet of 3/4 inch line to catch condensation. I have a pre-filter on the other end coming off the compressor and a desiccant dryer on the end of this. So pretty substantial air drying system. At first we thought my issues were related to like the starting cut height, so we started setting the cut height with shims and programming nominal voltage instead of using Langmuir's smart voltage feature for all of my different thickness materials I was trying to cut. None of these things help. It was at that point that we began to suspect electromagnetic interference as the culprit. So one thing I did is I extended all of the cables in the system to move the plasma cutter as far away from the table as possible, as far away from the electronics box as possible. At one point I had it quite a bit further away than it is now. I don't want to foreshadow too much, but that wasn't the cause. But I bought extension cables for every single type of cable that I have in this system, and we moved everything as far away as we could get it. I uncoiled all of the cables. When you coil up a torch lead or a ground clamp, it acts like an antenna and it basically magnifies the electromagnetic signal. So I made sure every cable was straight and routed them so they could be straight. Performed some further EMI reduction steps beyond that. I rerouted the torch and Z-axis leads to make them more streamlined on the sides of the machine as well as on the boom here. I tested my garage service for voltage drop. I ended up rewiring my garage sub panel because there was a bonded neutral in there that I guess was to code at one point but wasn't to code any longer, and we thought maybe that was having some ground loop feedback sort of situation. I performed several various continuity and resistance checks between the electronics unit and the machine itself. I fixed an issue where my unit had the USB shell on the USB cable input touching the metal case that the electronics reside in. I tried running nothing but the plasma cutter in the table. So basically I was out here cutting with nothing plugged in, no lights on, like in the dark literally, and not running anything in the house at all. We tried turning off our Wi-Fi router. I tried ground plug isolators on all of my plugs that were plugged in. I added ferrite chokes to plugs, to USB cords. I tried a USB isolator. I eliminated the limit switches because those were brand new when I bought my machine, and there was some thinking within the collective that the limit switches could be causing problems. We basically at that point were just trying to eliminate variables, right? I tried backdating my fire control software to a previous version to see if I could get it to run on that. I ended up checking internal power supply inside the electronics controller voltages, both while the unit was at rest and while the unit was running. So that was fun because I had sparks flying from the plasma running and was sitting there trying to probe inside the machine. I checked the VIM box voltages, both incoming and outcoming. I backdated my laptop to a previous version of Windows to see if it was a Windows 11 compatibility thing because Windows 11 was brand new, Ultimately, I ended up buying a separate laptop to rule out that the laptop was somehow the issue. I wired my prime weld machine, which was the first machine I had on here, to raw voltage. Made no difference between divided and raw. I ended up replacing the plasma cutter entirely with the Everlast unit, and the problem still persisted. And so at that point, I was starting to get pretty pissed because literally I had changed everything on the setup with the exception of Langmuir's control box, and they still weren't stepping up and offering to send me a new control box, right? Beyond that point, I had a breakthrough, and I put my workpiece on the table, I rubber isolated it. So I got big blocks of rubber and I spaced the work off from the table. So I had a sheet of steel ground clamped to the plasma cutter being plasma cut, but it wasn't transferring electricity into the table in any way. And it worked perfectly. So now I know that somehow torch voltage is interfering and backfeeding its way into the electronics. So we tried to isolate the electronics enclosure from the table. It is isolated from the factory, but we disconnected it and moved it as far away as the wires would allow us to move it. So there was no possible way that voltage could get through the table frame into the electronics. That made no difference at all. I checked to see if voltage was getting through the IHS contacts on the Z-axis, and I found that it was. There was actually evidence of arcing there, but that wasn't where it was getting into the electronics. So then I started tracing voltage through all the stepper motors themselves, and that was when I found that I had torch voltage somehow backfeeding through the Z-axis stepper motor up the stepper motor control into the electronics enclosure. I replaced the Z-axis motor, and that made a huge improvement, but I was still having some freezing. And at that point, I wrote the following letter to Langmuir Systems. At that point, I had a thread on their forum with over 800 responses. I said, I'd like to state for the record that it has been 44 days that I have been chasing this fire control DRO freezing issue. In an effort to remedy these issues, I've taken the following steps, and I listed all of the steps that I just listed to you guys. I said that I have identified arc voltage entering the Langmuir electronics enclosure via defective Z-axis motor or Z-axis motor cable and replaced the Z-axis motor assembly. Freezing seemed to improve significantly, but it still persists. I think it is relatively likely that the defective Z-axis motor backfeeding arc voltage into the Langmuir electronics could have damaged something internally. I would hope at this point that Langmuir Systems could either send me a new electronics enclosure to eliminate this as a variable, or come up with a definitive procedure by which I could test the electronics enclosure for proper functioning. Like I said, I had one of their tech people working with me for multiple weeks, and he probably spent 20 hours on the phone and in my computer while I was cutting, trying to diagnose this. And he couldn't figure it out. And I said, it's gotta be the electronics. Is there a way to test the electronics? And they didn't have a test procedure, which was very frustrating because they're the manufacturer, so they should know how to test their unit, right? And they didn't want to send me a new one because that's probably the single most expensive part of their system. But like, if you don't know how to test it, you're not willing to send out a replacement, you put a lot of onus on the owner. So I closed my letter by saying, at this point, the X motor, both Y motors, and the Langmuir electronics enclosure, including the torch height control module, are the only parts of the equation that have not been replaced. I have forwarded numerous crash reports and both photos and videos of the freezing to Langmuir Systems. To reiterate, I've spent thousands of dollars eliminating the variables that are my responsibility to eliminate. Brand new computer, brand new plasma cutter, and rewired the entire shop, to name a few. And over 100 hours of my own troubleshooting time. All of the tangible issues that have been discovered have traced back to Langmuir supplied components. And this is in addition to receiving incorrect table frame components, which were replaced, and a bent Y-axis weldment, a bent gantry tube, and a bent Y-axis lead screw, all of which I have just lived with. 44 days, 100 hours, and 20 hours of their own tech's time, and they finally agreed to send me a new electronics enclosure, and that fixed the problem. Like I said, I think this lead screw, I'll probably eventually replace it on my own dime because I think it is leading to some jagged geometry when I'm making like long straight Y-axis cuts. I tend to have a problem with it. It's somewhat intermittent, but I can't find any other cause, and the lead screw is whipping around pretty significantly, so I think it might just be a vibration thing. But other than that, the machine's been flawless. And in fact, it's paid for itself. But I've made a ton of signs. The artistic sign thing seems to be like Like, that's not even my forte, and that seems to be the #1 thing I'm able to sell from this table. Enough to pay for the whole thing at this point. So am I pissed? No, not at all. But that said, 44 days, and I do this for a living. I don't make a very good living at it, but I do it for a living. And that was 44 days of me working full time, not making money, not repaying my investment. And luckily I was in a place in my business where I was able to spend the time, put the time in to make it happen. Otherwise I probably would have scrapped this thing, right? So there's my 2-year follow-up on the Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro CNC Plasma. If I could leave you guys with a bit of advice, I would say, know what you're getting into.
All right, folks, thank you so much for watching this week. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like what you saw in today's video. Leave a comment if something intrigued you. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. I've got a buy me a coffee link that I put in the descriptions of the videos. If you found this information helpful and feel like kicking me $5, I won't say no. Anyway, thank you so much again for watching. I couldn't do it without you guys, and we'll see you on the next one, all right? Thank you. Take care.